Folks, and welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Today, let's talk about the great segregation of neighborhoods that we're seeing 50 years later, and we're still separated according to a new study. Also, let's talk about how to reduce gun violence. One study says that we should focus on changing the quality of life, the economic hardships of many Black community residents. We'll discuss the implications of that. Also, in the second hour, more police killings than has ever been recorded. We'll look at the big number, according to the Washington Post, which seems to be tracking this more so than the United States government. And then later, man, we got something special for you to show you about what we can expect on Super Bowl Sunday. We got our culture crew members, Eric Lee, Rashad Staten, and of course, my wife, Nira Muhammad. So stay with us. It's The Culture, only on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the show. I'm very, very excited about what we got planned for you this afternoon. First, we want to have our first conversation, which addresses or deals with the issue of segregation. According to a new study, it looks like we are still more segregated now than we were 50 years ago. And it's creating a lot of changes in how we are deciding on where to live, who to live next to, and so much more. Now, in a moment, we're going to bring one of our culture crew members, Eric Lee, Reverend Eric Lee, who has been doing the work of looking at the issue of gentrification, displacement, and of course, to looking at the issue of housing in the Black community. And then later, we'll talk about how to reduce gun violence in the Black community with economic hardship. So we'll have that conversation in just a moment. Folks, look, let's take a quick pause. We're going to come right back just to deal with this tech difficulty. Stay with us. It's The Culture on Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, we have been talking, we're going to have a conversation around housing issues in this country. According to a latest ABC News poll, it found that even though we have federal oversight in a lot of areas across the country, there still seems to be a pervasive trend of segregated neighborhoods and communities in states across the country. Now, according to this poll, they're saying that despite 50 years of federal oversight under the landmark Federal Fair Housing Act of 1968, housing segregation still persists in America's largest cities and urban centers. And in this ABC News analysis of mortgage lending data, it also shows that there's a pattern of racial isolation, which remains consistent following decades of failed incentives. Let me just break down the numbers for you. The analysis shows, folks, that 20 of the nation's top 100 metropolitan areas have a quote unquote extreme dissimilarity index of 50 or higher, which means that at least half of the population would have had to move to another neighborhood in the area to achieve total integration in 2019. I want to go to our culture crew member, Reverend Eric Lee, who is doing the work, who has done community work as an activist, but more importantly, he's done the work of studying this trend as he's been doing work with housing, and is currently working on the dissertation around the issue of gentrification, displacement, and housing in the Black and Brown communities. So, Reverend Eric Lee, good to have you back on the show, brother. Thank you so much for checking in.
Always good to be with you, Brother Farajii.
Let's talk a little bit about this latest situation with this news analysis from ABC saying that, 50 years later, you would think that we would be making some major gains and some progress, Brother Eric. But the reality is we're still miles apart from this, and based upon the data in this report and literally from each other. What do you make of this?
Well, I think it's an ongoing pattern, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, that is government sanctioned. And, you can go back to, and you mentioned, going back, and I think you mentioned the GI Bill after World War II, returning veterans, the GI Bill was supposed to provide resources for returning veterans, Black and white, to be able to buy homes, invest in businesses, and go to school. The problem was that it was almost exclusively provided to white veterans, which then initiated the white flight out of communities close to the city and created the suburbs where it was predominantly or majority white neighborhoods. This was government sanctioned segregation. You also see in redlining, and you can go back to the real estate covenants that were created to make sure that communities remained white or remained Black, because the residential covenants prevented Black folks from buying in white neighborhoods. And Baltimore led the nation in racial real estate covenants, which was government sanctioned. It was legalized to keep Black folks from integrating into white neighborhoods. And so this pattern has continued from the turn of the century until today. And you even have Dr. Lawrence Brown, who came out with a book recently called The Black Butterfly.
Right.
Talks about the concentration of poverty around certain neighborhoods in the Baltimore community. And you can see actually the wings of the butterfly representing Black folks that are surrounding the inner city or the inner harbor, concentrated poverty that's taking place, still segregation, still majority white or majority Black communities going on in every major city across the country. And when you say that, you talk about Baltimore, that is actually on the list, Brother Eric, in terms of this extreme dissimilarity index. Let me just share with folks what other major cities are on that list. So I said 20 of the top metropolitan areas: Cleveland, Ohio; Buffalo, New York; Detroit, Michigan; St. Louis, Missouri; Memphis, Tennessee; Birmingham, Alabama; Jackson, Mississippi; Springfield, Massachusetts; New Orleans, Louisiana; Miami, Florida; Bridgeport, Connecticut; Baltimore; Cincinnati, Ohio; Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Providence, Rhode Island. And it seems like in all of these cities, Brother Eric, there's a high concentration of Black folks in most of these cities. These are the urban centers. At this point, I mean, we're 54 years past the Fair Housing Act. How come we're just not seeing the type of urgency from the government that we would expect is to enforce fair housing? How come we're still seeing this level of segregation 54 years later? Well, I mean, that's somewhat of a rhetorical question, because what we have is embedded in the DNA of our country is an institutional and systemic racism that continues to be pervasive within our culture, economically, socially, politically. It continues to I think support white privilege, and so what we are seeing is nothing more than a continuation of policies and practices of the United States government, of I would say governmental agencies, and cities and states across the country in which they are continuing to ensure that there is privileged areas for white folks, and I would say areas in which Black folks are in need of desperate services.
Mm.
So, we see that in Baltimore. We see it in the South. We see it in the West. We see it in the North. And so it continues to be a problem and will continue to be a problem because I think it's embedded in the DNA of this country.
I mean, it certainly is embedded. I mean, you and I have had many conversations to talk about this issue of displacement and gentrification, of course, and now we're also dealing with a big challenge of gerrymandering, where we're seeing that new political, new congressional maps are being drawn out in states across the country, which has, really limited the resources that these neighborhoods or these cities can get when it comes to like federal money, and it has put a lot of these cities in a place where home lending practices and is so pervasive, or the lack of home lending practices are so pervasive in some of these cities that Black people, the Latino community, are kind of stuck where they are, versus spreading out to neighborhoods that suit their interests and of course their family life and their quality of life. And so I'm wondering, Brother Eric, when we look at these factors, I'm wondering, is there any recourse for Black folks in this whole scenario?
You see, the challenge is that under so-called legislative acts that are supposed to create equity and promote equality, they are really simply a disguise for continued pervasive discrimination. When you look at the predatory lending that came out of, like, say, the Housing Act, predatory lending, they gave more loans to Black folks, but they were high interest loans with huge payoffs that ultimately ended up in a situation where Black folks were either upside down in their properties or facing foreclosures. So they can tout that, the banks can tout that, they're giving more loans, but the type of loans that they're giving are also discriminatory in nature, because when you take someone white with the same job, the same income, the same credit rating, go into a bank with someone who is Black in this identical characteristics, I'd say 8 out of 10 times the bank is going to give a loan, a preferred loan, to the white client and applicant as opposed to the Black applicant.
Facts.
And so we're still, and so the recourse is having an investigation into lending practices.
Absolutely.
I mean, you also have the CRA, the Community Reinvestment Act, but that, where banks are supposed to be giving into Black communities, but what they're doing is they're giving loans to white folks to come into Black communities, because white folks are getting loans to go into Black communities at a higher rate than Black folks can get loans to go into white communities.
I want to bring in Rashad Staton, who is one of our Culture Crew members, activist and educator. Rashad, we've been talking about this issue for quite some time here in the city of Baltimore, but to see this trend happening nationally, it really is eye-opening, especially considering the fact that we're supposed to be so far, so much further along. And like Brother Eric was saying, you have these lending practices. I was doing some work with the CRA Baltimore group, and I got to bring those folks on because when we were having conversations or meetings with various banks, and you look at the numbers, and Brother Eric, you're right on the money. When you look at how much money is actually invested in Black people versus white people and other folks, it's no comparison. Absolutely no comparison. So from your vantage point, Brother Rashard, when we're talking about making that institutional push to change this culture of displacement, but more that institutional push of changing the culture of disinvestment, where do we start?
Yeah, I think Reverend hit it right on the nose. I think he's spot on with this, and I only want to pick up from where he's already started. I think what we're looking at here is unfair legislative actions that would not render any success without actual going back and working with the other agencies and institutions that are attached to trying to create some equitable practices that actually show fruition for us as Black folk to get some type of upward mobility and some type of financial footings, right? With legislative action, you then need guidances and best practices, but you also need to retrain the institutions and the agencies that are actually perpetuating the same. For us to go back with a critical lens on our banking institutions and how they go around loan approvals, the perpetuatory loan agreements and the mortgages that they have, right? Much of this has always been the indicator of oppressing us through home ownership, acquiring land and things of that sort, right? We can match up on paper, but when they see our Black skin, now we have to now combat the unconscious and the conscious biases. We have to negate the fact of how they perceive us as not our true reality. So how do we then enforce through legislative action the intentional, I want to say, buildup in information and knowledge that has to be trained to those that are banking staff personnel, those that are approving, those that are giving and offering these loans, that again, that these numbers won't stifle us, because we see that we are eligible for most of what we are trying to gain, and we should be already naturally awarded. But if it comes down outside of legislative action to the person that we're sitting across from, and they come with their own biases, their own prejudgments, they're going to enact this systemic racism and actions themselves that will stifle our growth. So I think in addition to these faulty legislative actions, we now have to revert our lens back to these banking institutions, back to these creditors, and back to everyone else that has some sense of power in the decision making that's going to directly impact us as people, our ownership, our wealth, and our social, economic, and educational status. We now have to teach out and not just look at the federal institutions, but we have to look at the banking institutions as well, because they play a major part in this.
And Brother Eric, talk to us about how the census plays a part into this whole thing, because when we just did the census in 2020, there was a huge push. I was pushing the census. I tell people all the time, fill out the census, make sure that you're counted, because that does make a difference in getting certain resources and resources allocated to your neighborhood. But how does that play into this whole scenario?
Well, so I think the census in itself is necessary so that we can have an accurate accounting of our numbers in these cities, and then be able to advocate and actually demand for resources that would meet those numbers. And so, but I anything that is, I think, government initiated, I have concerns about, because the numbers can always be manipulated on behalf of those who are in control and power. And so, I mean, it almost leads to the question or the issue that you talked about earlier, is in the gerrymandering. I mean, what good is a census when the elected officials can go about and gerrymander districts so that they can maintain control, legislative control, in most of the state or the district that they're representing?
And that's what we saw happening in Alabama just a few days ago with the Supreme Court approving the congressional map of the Republicans who redrew all of those lines in Alabama, and they approved it. And one of the big cities that suffer from extreme dissimilarity index is Birmingham. And so we're seeing power plays with neighborhoods and people's lives in such a way that it's important that we organize. And I think all of us can agree to that if we're not organized as a community, and I'm saying literally as a community, then we're not going to be a part of the conversation. We won't be at the table, however you want to put it, if we're not organized. This other thing is that we do have to know what the dynamics are. If you're living in a neighborhood that is a neighborhood that was once flourishing and then has kind of gone through some major challenges over these past 20 years or so, but you're living in a neighborhood that is considered to be prime real estate, a neighborhood that's close to the Beltway, or a neighborhood that's close to, the tourist attractions, but it's not flourishing. You have to know that there are people and there are plans that are being put in place to take over those neighborhoods, to make those neighborhoods more acceptable, more diverse, quote unquote, and all of these things. So, I mean, we really got to know how, when we settle down to live in a place, we have to know the dynamics of the place that we live. We have to know the pros and the cons. And I think that's part of the reason why. Then we can certainly talk about home ownership versus renters. I know here in Baltimore, we have a huge number of renters and not enough home owners. And it certainly plays out when you're talking about that home lending practices. It plays out with determining like which neighborhoods will get the resources. And it's all about being informed about all of these dynamics. You don't have to know each and every little thing, but you do need to be informed.
Yeah, but it's important to me from a census perspective to know what percentage of the population we make up, because then we should have at least a representative representation within the legislative bodies of our city and our state. Yep. It's important to know that what our percentage of the population is, so that we will have an equitable amount of resources going to the needs of those in that population. And Absolutely. So to that degree, it's important to know, to complete the census. But I still have some concern about the legislative acts, as my brother said, that take place in spite of the numbers that actually are developed and applied, that penalize people of color more than benefit people of color.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brothers, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, we're going to take this conversation to a new place. Let's talk about this latest research that shows that or suggests that addressing gun violence in the Black community should start with improving the economic opportunities. We'll have that conversation. And then in the next hour, we'll also look at the issue of what's going on with the police, how the Washington Post is keeping a better track of police killing than the Department of Justice. Wow. So we still got a lot to get to. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, we're talking about what is going on in our neighborhoods. The first part of the conversation was talking about segregation, how 50 years of segregation continues to be a very pervasive trend in cities across the country, with Black folks, brown folks being segregated and left without the resources that white communities are getting. Now let's shift gears to another part of this problem, which is the issue of gun violence. According to a new study, a study that was conducted by the Center for Economic and Policy Research, they're suggesting that the key to addressing gun violence in the Black community starts with remedying economic hardship. Now, the Race and Economic Justice Director, Algernon Austin, explained the documented link between gun violence and economic stability. According to his research, Black men ages 18 through 34 years old are overrepresented among gun homicide victims. He noted that while economic hardship is only one variable dealing with gun violence, reducing economic hardship could be a powerful tool to reduce gun violence. Now, he relied on data from 2019, where he found that a significant relationship between high rates of hardship and violence, because we're seeing that a lot of politicians are kind of going back to this 90s styles approach of being tough on crime. And there's evidence that suggests that addressing this economic disparity is one way to reduce the violence. Now, when you look at this issue and the root causes, what is making a Black man go to the point that he wants to go and not just threaten, but kill his brother, is because of the lack of opportunities that he feels that he doesn't have. I want to bring back my culture crew members, Reverend Eric Lee, pastor and community organizer, and Rashad Staton, who is an educator and activist. Now, brothers, when we think about this, this is not necessarily a new find, a new piece of data, but I think it's interesting. I do think that it's interesting that if we're talking about reducing gun violence in the Black community, that it should start with creating some new economic opportunities. And I'm wondering, okay, if this has always been on the plate, Rashad, why aren't we trying it? I mean, we know that gun violence is a real problem in our neighborhood. I mean, hell, look at Baltimore. We have been struggling reeling under 300 plus homicides a year for the past 6 to 7 years. Now we're at this point, and it's like, well, when is the ball going to drop to make a move to change the culture and to provide some real economic opportunities for Black folk?
Yeah, I agree. I'm one like Reverend Lee. I'm very skeptical when it comes to that and even some academia research. But this one in particular, I think it calls out the answer to the riddle. These hard on crime type of tactics that are legislatively implemented has not shown positive results. It often creates a reciprocal type of cycle of now having others become just as involved. But if we look at the economic opportunities that can be advanced and further provided through those that are needed for that, it plays another part and it gives us another lens to the work of us seeing us as better persons and better communities. I think it's needed, and I'm just gracious and happy that about time. I'm at that about time place in my life of looking at us how we can build better, safer, and cleaner communities for us as Black and brown folks. Know that, right? Only gun violence and things of that sort is a variable of us having to be, I want to say, ostracized in a place where we have to survive, right? But if you give us economic and employability opportunities, we can move from not just surviving, but to live. And once we have that, someone that is employed, that reduces the time needed or reduces the stress factors that puts a person in place that they have to do something that is illegal or have some type of criminality that they now are focused and want to move towards not surviving, not living, but now thriving. And thriving comes with a sense of wealth, a sense of knowledge, and a sense of information and accessibility. So if we are tapped into accessibility for us to move forward economically, that should be put in place. We just need these opportunities, and now we need to see how this money is not just being stifled at the top through legislation, but it's actually going to roll out into our communities, help us build small businesses, help us retain the businesses that we do have, and help us to invest back into our educational systems that'll reach us through early education all the way through higher education in itself. I think this is a great point.
And Brother Eric, so basically what I'm hearing from this research, this study, is that if you give a man a job, he don't have time to go around and shoot and kill people. I mean, is it really that simple? I mean, of course, there's some other factors, but is that if you give a man a job, if you give a Black man a job, then we don't have time to go around, start to harm one another and to want to kill one another.
Well, I think that's part of it, and I agree with everything that Brother Rashad said. If a brother is working, and not just working a minimum wage job, not just working a slave labor job, but working to the point where you have both personal and financial growth and able to take care of your family, then options are opened up to you to where you don't have the time to be, just hanging out on the street and trying to get into something. And so, but I think one of my challenges in terms of researching the relationship between gun violence and Black folks is, why aren't they researching gun violence and these white folks who are shooting up the schools? I don't see any major research studies on that. And so to me, part of it is criminalizing Black folks by making the tie between gun violence and Black folks, when we see schools being shot up and children being taken out by white gunmen and in white neighborhoods, but yet you don't see any major research studies on that. So part of my problem, part of my challenge is why we have, and it's probably mostly white, researchers that are looking at Black folks and why we are engaging in violence. I'm having some real issues with that. And so, but to the point that Brother Rashad is making and that you're making, Brother Farajii, is that, if we have opportunity, if we have options, if we have economic opportunity to do better for ourselves, we're not going to engage in some of the activities that are still based on survival, still based on taking care of your family, but from the other side of the coin, where it is not necessarily the healthiest for our community. And so
it's interesting, Brother Eric and Rashad, because as much as there has been conversation about, policing and changing the strategies to address this issue of gun violence, there, with this research, it's interesting because this research is kind of going against, in my opinion, it's going against what we are seeing a trend in when deal with gun violence, which is seeing gun violence as a public health crisis and not an economic crisis. For example, in New York, Mayor Eric Adams, the black mayor that was just elected to the mayor in New York, he put out a what they call a blueprint to end gun violence in New York City. And he said, quote, "Gun violence is a public health crisis that continues to threaten every corner of our city. We pray for all the victims of violence and their families who are suffering, but we're going to do more than pray. We're going to turn our pain into purpose. Public safety is my administration's highest priority, which is why we will remove guns from our streets, protect our communities, and create a safe, prosperous, and just city for all New Yorkers." And he said that the roadmap calls for both intervention and prevention to end the gun violence epidemic affecting New York, and calls on the federal government and New York State to partner with his administration and other city entities to take immediate action to reduce gun violence. Over the long term, he says that he's going to try to address the root causes that lead to gun violence by growing economic opportunities, improving the education of city children, and providing greater access to mental health support and more. And I'm wondering, Rashad, is that the track that we need to start to see? Because I think that for too many years, we've taken the gun violence to be a policing issue. Now, it just seems over these past couple of years, gun violence is being put into a public health space. Now we're talking about putting it into an economic space. Is this a good direction for us to take to address this epidemic?
I think there's various directions we could take, but this one in itself, who is to say that we can't take both approaches simultaneously? Of course, it is a public health and a public safety implications that's connected to gun violence and just community well-being, but also like the mayor-elect there mentioned in his reporting, that economics has to be one of the driving factors that's attached to this approach to the public health lens. I think they both are equally important. And if we operate with both of these approaches simultaneously, then we'll start to see some betterment working towards it, because we already know, and it's already clear as day, that over-policing Black and brown communities does not render positive results. It only intensifies and bring us to increased ability to be, I want to say, incarcerated, to come across some type that will then eventually put other additional barriers that will hinder us from employability and economic development. Over policing does not work. Public health in itself cannot just solely operate through one of the solution practices, but economics needs to be attached to it as well. And I think that's
I agree with you, and I definitely agree with you, Rashad. I'm also thinking about the root causes of gun violence, right? Like, I know that there's this thing in this country that we love to do. We love to throw money at a situation, but money don't change people in terms of their thinking.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And that's part of my frustration, Brother Eric, is that you got all of these, psychologists, we got Black psychiatrists, we got Black social scientists. Like, I'm not hearing the chorus of these Black mental health and social science professionals who are saying, hey, wait a minute, this is not just about money. This is about a thinking. This is about something much deeper than just having a job. This is about just something, even looking at this as a public health situation. This is really about people who have become so broken in how they see themselves in the world that they have essentially said, you know what, the only way that I'm going to make my mark on the world, the only way I'm going to get anything out of this situation, my lifestyle, my life right now, is resorting to violence. This is like a survival thinking. And I'm wondering why we're not seeing more on that side, not just talking about the mental health side, like the impact of violence, but more on the thinking of those who are pulling the triggers. Am I off on that, Brother Eric?
No, you're, in fact, when you think about it, I want to first say to Rashad, you're right. It has to be a multi-pronged approach. My concern is that on the policing end, that the profiling that will take place will catch up a lot of brothers and sisters that are not engaging in gun violence, but just walking down the street and have and are profiled as being a potential carrier of a gun. And so that's a problem I have. And that's, particularly because Bill Bratton also praised the mayor of New York for his approach. And Bill Bratton, I dealt with him in Los Angeles, and they came with heavy profiling and over policing that we had to challenge when he was there in Los Angeles.
And that's a black man.
No, Bill Bratton.
Bradley?
Bill Bratton was a chief of police.
Oh, okay.
He was
yes,
a white man.
Got you.
But when Farajii, to your point about mental health, you are right on when we're talking about us as a people being broken. We're talking about people who have survived slavery, the worst institution of slavery the world has ever seen. People that have come through Jim and Jane Crow segregation, that people who have continuously been discriminated against decade after decade in employment opportunities and housing and education in every aspect of society, and subjected to violence, mob violence throughout the history of our existence here without any intervention. So we're people who are experiencing generational trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder without any interventions, without any public health, mental health interventions. So when we see the condition of our people broken, and you can drive through the streets of Baltimore or any major city in the country, and you see our people are bent over with a heavy burden on their back.
Come on.
That we have not been provided the type of resources and tools to be able to weather this onslaught of hatred that has been against our people. And when you're talking about us as a people living in the belly of this beast for over 400 years, you take on the nature of that people who have engaged in this onslaught of hatred against us.
Yep.
That created a hatred against one another. And what we need to do is return to loving our blackness, loving black men, loving black women, seeing ourselves as brothers and sisters and family, which will then, I think, reduce the violence against one another. But we have to go back to loving being black.
Well, you know what, Brother Eric, that speaks to the space that I see a lot of us. I mean, we kind of want to go to A to D instead of taking A, B, C, taking each step. And I'm so happy that you brought that up, brother, because as you know, as a member of the church, of the member of the community organizing community, you understand that there has to be a change in one's thinking first before there's a change in one's reality. And if you're talking about, if you really want to change gun violence in black communities and in the hearts and minds of black men, you got to make black men to see themselves as humans. You got to help black men to see themselves as being valuable and worthy. You got to help black men to see their brother as such, their brother. And that's a spiritual journey too, because we can't overlook the power of spiritual guidance and teaching. We can't overlook the power of the church, the mosque, and any faith institution. You have to bring that in, because going back to your point about being broken, that brokenness has to be healed. And that brokenness is a condition that we often find ourselves in, Rashad, because it's been like ingrained in us since we were babies that we were going to be a certain type of human being, right? Some of that is ingrained in us from our very own, whether it's our mother or father or family member. And then the other part of that is ingrained in us because of the society that we're in. There has to be something to counter the pressure. Like you said, Brother Eric, we're bent over in burden. We have to counter that pressure on the inside of the internal person. There has to be something that's there to counter the pressure of the outside that is constantly burdening us. Rashad, what's your take?
Yeah, I think you both are spot on. Just knowing that it's Black History Month, I look at a quick quote from Carter G. Woodson that says, "Who are we to judge anybody by their actions without taking accountability of their lived experience, their education, their economics, and how they react to those are all going to be variables to how they live and exist in life." That we actually have to look back and we got to humanize ourselves with understanding that, again, we are perpetuating something that we didn't bring on ourselves, but we were taught through 400 to 500 years or something. And now, out of survival, we have ended up being our own enemies to ourselves. But through darkness, light only runs out of darkness, and that love, it has to be the light that we give to each other. I think it's impressionable, but despite it, what we have to also do is be intentional how we provide this educational and spiritual experience to our young people and our adults through the educational system. We have to make time in our curriculum to teach self-love. We have to make time to teach self-awareness. We have to take time to understand identity, and we have to take time to go back into a place where we as Black folks were thriving and understand, while certain times in our history when we were thriving, why it has been omitted, that we can't understand that this actually existed. And with that void, we perpetuate it because we don't know. And once we tap into our greatness, which is the reason why everyone studies Blackness as the most profitable specimen, once we understand and study ourselves, then we will retain the power for us to continue to be great in everything that we do. And that'll transcend violence, that'll transcend oppression, that'll transcend all that we are, because we're greater than where we currently are seeing ourselves right now.
And look, you know what? Shakira checked in and said, look, she works in public health, and gun violence is definitely a public health problem. And Shakira, thank you so much for your comment. Keep the comments going, folks. But to your point, Brother Rashad, that we have to do more. Look, you work in education. We can't say enough to Black boys about the value of their lives. I have an 8-year-old son, and I'm always telling. And Eric, you got a son. When you're conscious, you gotta constantly. And people seem to think that, oh, consciousness lives in this bubble. No, you have to consciously and intentionally reaffirm the value, the worthiness, and the life of Black boys in particular. I'm not saying that Black girls shouldn't be reaffirmed either. Let's look at that majority of these killings of Black people are at the hands of Black men, right? So you got to consciously and intentionally reaffirm life, reaffirm value, reaffirm worth when you're talking to Black boys and to Black men, right? Because that's something, and I'm saying, Brother Eric, that's something that we have power over. I can't speak about legislation. We don't have power over, the health commissioner coming out with a public health plan. But what we do have power over, what we can do today, is reaffirm life, reaffirm the value, the worth. And see, I know a lot of beautiful Black men that have reaffirmed my life because why? They were conscious. They took the time to learn. They took the time to seek truth and knowledge, and they reaffirm. And I'm passing that on. That's the new cultural. That should be the new cultural tradition, that we need to reaffirm life. That when you see a Black man, or when you see a Black woman, you go up to them and you say, you know what? Peace, brother. How you doing? Everything all right? And reaffirm life. I hope all goes well with you today, dear brother. I hope all goes well with you, my man, or hope all goes well with you, God. However you want to say it, but there has to be a reaffirmation of life. And I mean, if the simple thing of just saying good morning to your neighbors, and Eric, you and I, we talked about this, in neighborhoods that are already depressed, oppressed, and just losing any type of progress, the smallest things that we can do is say good morning. Hey, brother, Mr. Williams, I hope you have a good day, sir. May God be with you. Something. Let's not break down a mug every time we see our brother. Let's not get all uptight, but we got to reaffirm life. Brother Eric, you got the final word. Got 30 seconds.
I'd also say that we need to instill hope again for our people. hope for a future that is bright and fruitful and unified with us as a people, but also as a guiding force and a guiding light for the world that we're in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brothers, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, speaking of life, let's talk about the fact that there have been a number of police killings in the past year. And the Washington Post, who's keeping track of this, is doing more than what we're seeing from the federal government. We'll share with you the numbers and what you can expect. Also, I got a little surprise for you at the end for the Super Bowl weekend. And speaking of the Super Bowl, let's talk about the NFL. The NFL is having some major problems. And I'm going to share with you what the current commissioner, Roger Goodell, had to say about the whole controversy of black coaches and so much more. So stay with it. We got a lot to get to in the second hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Folks, we just had a powerful first hour talking a little bit about housing segregation, but then we also talked about gun violence. And speaking of violence with the gun, I wanted us to have a conversation around some of the latest data affecting in regards to the issue of police brutality. Now, you know, on this show, we started the conversation, certainly on my Big Brother show, Roland Martin Unfiltered. This has been an ongoing discussion. But when you start to look at the numbers of people, the number of situations and incidents that have happened where police are killing people, and as the police would say, they use the term justifiable homicide. When you start to really look at those numbers, then you'll start to have a better understanding of why this scenario that we find ourselves in, why this dilemma that we are all experiencing is so crazy. Let me just break it down to you. Now, I'm getting these numbers directly from the Washington Post. Now, the Washington Post they did something that, we're starting to see more media outlets do, which is if the government is not going to do it, then we'll do it. And so the Washington Post started to do a tracking system of police shootings that have been happening across the country. Now, why isn't the government not doing this? Because the government hasn't created an infrastructure, the mechanism for this. And I'm going to go back to the part with the George Floyd Justice for Policing Act. The Justice for Policing Act, in that piece of legislation, if it was passed, called for a national database of police-involved shootings, not just of Black men, but also of women as well, and other folks from the other parts from other communities. It called for the Department of Justice. It called for law enforcement agencies to start taking accountability when they start taking our lives. And so when we're talking about, all of this other stuff in terms of, well, what we're going to do with police brutality, or it's not that bad, or it's we need some real data. There have been opportunities for us to get real data. It is that bad. And now we're going to have to look at this, and not just look at this from a logical sense, not just look at this from a philosophical sense. This has to be looked at and say, okay, how do we take this data? How do we use it to empower? How do we use it to change the culture of killing of Black people by the police? According to the Washington Post, police shot and killed at least 1,055 people nationwide last year, the highest total since the Washington Post began its tracking fatal shootings by officers in 2015. And it underscores the difficulty, according to the Post, of reducing such incidents despite sustained public attention to this issue. And last year, folks, over 1,000 people were shot and killed by police. Last year, a year after we saw George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and protest for all of these past victims of police brutality and deaths at the hands of police. We saw protests in the streets. We saw all of these things happening, people getting outraged. And guess what? In 2021, this was the highest number of people killed in a single year by the police. Now, the new count is up from 1,021 shootings the previous year and 999 killings and shootings in 2019. Now, a part of that, according to the Post, said the total comes amid a nationwide spike in violent crime. And as people increasingly are venturing into public spaces now that COVID vaccines are widely available. Despite setting a record, experts say that the 2021 total was within expected bounds. Wow. Police have fatally shot roughly 1,000 people in each of the past 7 years, ranging from 958 in 2016 to last year's high. And so people are asking the question, why is this still happening? I want to go back to my culture crew member, Reverend Eric Lee, to get his take on this situation. And I know Brother Rashad had to jump off, and we appreciate him for being a part of the first set of conversation. But Brother Eric, when we look at this situation, 1,055 people, you would think after all this time, you would think after all of this talk about reforming police departments, changing tactics, that we would start to see a little bit of a decline in the number of incidents that have occurred. But we're not. What's your take on this?
Well, I think that, and it's been identified that the biggest problem is the Police Bill of Rights, where it states that if a police officer feels threatened, that they have the right to use force, deadly force. And they're only trained to use deadly force. They're trained to make kill shots. They're not trained to wound or to temporarily hold someone in custody. They're trained to kill. They're trained killing. It's a paramilitary force. And so the Police Bill of Rights is a completely subjective allowance for a police officer to be able to shoot and kill someone that they feel threatened by. There's nothing objective about that. And here's the problem. They feel threatened when they walk down the street as a citizen.
Right.
They feel threatened the minute they put on that uniform. They're taught to feel threatened, and they're taught to feel like everyone is a suspect, particularly Black folks and people of color. And so I don't see that number will decrease significantly until they address the issue of the Police Bill of Rights. And I want to say something that my wife had said. She said they should make police officers take out a malpractice insurance policy that they have to pay for. And she feels that you'll see a significant decrease in fatal shootings from police officers, because if they're held to the standards that doctors may be held at, they have to have malpractice insurance and pay for it, which is a very expensive insurance policy. But if they had that you might see some reduction in the amount of actual deadly shootings that occur from police officers.
Let me and so you want to talk dollars and cents on this, and I'm thinking this is a great part of the conversation. I can bet you, and you probably saw it when you were, as an activist and an organizer in Los Angeles, and now you're here in Baltimore, and then I see it. Police budgets on this from city government, huge. I mean, they take up a significant amount of money from police budgets. I know here in Baltimore, we're talking about 30%. Over $500 million is invested in quote unquote public safety, right? But a lot of that is going to the police department. Then when you're talking about the amount of money that is, like you said, malpractice, how much money the police had to put out to cover certain cases if they have any type of police misconduct cases. I mean, the amount of money that we're seeing that is going into this institution and then the amount of money coming out. I mean, it's like apples and oranges. We're putting a lot more money in. We're getting more equipment. Cities across the country are getting more police. They're doing more hiring. So more money is in that and is put into that effort. But then when you start to see the output, if you were to put the police department and use the same standard as we say a Fortune 500 business or corporation and say, okay, you're bringing in this amount of money. What is the return on the investment for your stockholders? We all be broke. We all be broke. You know what I mean? We would be like, oh, the stock for police departments is high. But then your return on your investment is real low. Your portfolio will look very small. It'll be real skinny.
So in that scenario, though, you as a business, as a corporation, in which you're looking at the greatest return on investment, you have to look at the people that you hire, which is your most important asset in any business. And so the people that you hire will determine your outcome, your productivity.
Yeah.
And so the people, and unfortunately, there is, again, when we talk about discrimination, there is a high level of discrimination when it comes to hiring practices in the police departments. And so, you only get out of this situation what you put into it, and what you're putting in are people who have biases from the beginning before even getting into the police department. They have biases that are discriminatory and racist against people of color. And that's what they're, and that's not all of them. I'm not making a blanket statement about the police department because I got family that are police.
Right.
And then you have some good conscious police officers that are trying to do right. But then what you have is a system of policing that is bigger and stronger than any individuals who seek to do the right thing in community policing.
Right.
And so you could take someone who is conscious. You and I could apply for the police department. We probably wouldn't get hired because of our backgrounds. But
hey, you want to hear something funny? Years ago, this hasn't been recently, because I talked to my dad about it. And years ago, I actually thought about becoming a police officer.
I applied. They didn't accept me.
They didn't accept you.
Because
they knew your history, brother.
I was from Oakland, and I graduated from UC Berkeley, and I guess I was too radical, too revolutionary. They did not hire me.
They didn't hire you? I actually thought about becoming a police officer.
I passed every test.
Wow.
The physical, psychological, every test, but I was not police material because I was not a killer.
That's a damn shame. That's a damn shame. Well, look, let's look at this point. No, I'm saying that's a damn shame. Like, I wonder if I probably, honestly, I would have, been a police officer, and people say, oh, I can see you being a police officer. You just have that type of temperament. I'm not a hot-headed dude. You know what I mean?
Well, I was.
But there's another part of this conversation which I think is important for us to consider, which is the fact that, we have this high level of advocacy for policing overhauls. Let me just break it down to you and to folks. Check this out, folks. Since the killing of George Floyd in 2020, we're in 2022 right now, brother Eric, more than 400 bills were introduced in state legislatures across the country last year. 400. Now you got all these bills, all of this piece of legislation, that people are talking about reform. 400 bills last year. And we're still seeing. Now, maybe those bills don't start taking effect until this year. Maybe don't start taking effect until 23. 400 bills. But look, let me just tell y'all, folks, in the next 3 to 5 years, this country should be in a much different space, and we should be having a totally different conversation about policing. If you got 400 bills in state legislatures across the country that were proposed to change policing in this country. Now, also the other thing, brother Eric, check this out. Police departments, they increasingly partner with mental health clinics and institutions. You saw that a number of cities established civilian review boards. We got a few, we've had those conversations here locally. And yet, none of it, all of these things that were happening over the past 2 years, and I'm just looking at 2 years since George Floyd, 2 years, none of it seemed to really put a dent. And we would be remiss in this conversation if we did not also speak to the matter that you have the Fraternal Order of Police, the FOP, in every state that serves to protect police officers, that serves to try to make sure that officers get their justice, their just due in court and all of those things. How the FOP has played a huge role in a lot of these police officers not being held accountable for the killing of us as citizens and constituents. Can you speak to this? 400 bills, brother Eric.
How many passed?
Okay.
How many were implemented? And of those that were implemented, did they effectively change the way policing is done? Does it hold police officers accountable? See, I got 4 words: Police Bill of Rights. Those 4 words continue to protect police officers from any deadly shootings, any fatalities that they engage in, because all they have to say is, I felt threatened. I was in fear of my life. And so until we address that issue, and I know that advocacy groups and activists have tried to deal with that, And it's probably the FOP that makes sure that that bill is going to remain intact to protect police officers. And don't get me wrong, we need policing. We need conscious policing.
Yeah.
And so I'm not against policing. I'm against bad policing. I'm against racist, discriminatory, abusive policing.
Yeah.
And so it needs to be reformed. And I know that we've attempted with the 400 bills, but yet that George Foreman bill has not yet come into fruition.
That George Floyd, yeah.
George Floyd. That shows you how old I am. George Floyd.
I mean, and you brought up the point how many have actually passed. And look, I hate to play the politics game, folks, because I really don't care about Republican and Democrats and all of those things. Like, I don't care about the labels. I care about the principles. I care about our interests. But a lot of these bills are going into state legislators in Republican-controlled states, right? So they're going to probably be dead. Most of these, I mean, you know, I foresee that if you are if you put in any type of police reform bill, significant, substantial police reform bill in any of these Republican-controlled states, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Or they're going to gut the bill out so bad that you essentially don't feel like, well, what's the point of having this bill? It's just going to be by name.
Yeah, it'll be window.
It's just by name. Yeah. But I want to share with folks just some of the comments that are coming in on our YouTube and our Facebook page. And folks, continue to post your comments so we can share and have you as part of the conversation. Embrim 9763 said, "How to get away with murder? I have the answer. Become a police officer." Damn. Evie West said, "They getting better shit to kill us with." Shaking my head. We got to get together and fix this before it's too late. Think about it. Man, oh man. We're in a situation, Brother Eric, where since we have this conundrum that we find, like this relationship that we find ourselves in, how do we move forward? I mean, and I want to tap into your experience in working in Los Angeles and dealing with one of the most, can I say corrupt? Can I say one of the most powerful police departments? If it's not more powerful than NYPD, it's in the top 3, right?
Absolutely.
You know, in dealing with that police department. And I'm saying that you were dealing with that during the years of everything from Rodney King to the whole situation, right? Like it's a much different LAPD now probably than what you were working with. How did y'all deal with that? How did you deal with that level of corruption? How did you deal with that level of injustice coming from the people who are supposed to enforce the law and do what's right?
So, you know, in every organization, it takes on the spirit of the head. And so, you know, we dealt with the police chief as civil rights organizations. I was running the SCL, Southern Christian Leadership Conference at the time in Los Angeles. But we worked collaboratively with the NAACP and the Urban League and the organization US, which is Dr. Maulana Karenga, the Brotherhood Crusade, and we worked well as a coalition against police abuse, and we would demand meetings with the police chief and his top brass to continuously engage them on issues of policing. It's a matter of not only engaging and having a conversation, but holding them accountable in a number of ways, whether it was us protesting, whether it was us doing op-ed articles in the newspaper, but bringing attention to the injustices of abusive police tactics within our communities. And it was a matter of just confronting the issue publicly rather than allowing it to always go on behind closed doors. And so, and the other part of it was that the coalition had to be in unity and tight enough to say, if you're going to call one, you're calling all of us, because how many times are we picked off by those who are in power seeking to make a deal with one organization against all other organizations so that they can say that they've accommodated the request of the community. And so operating in coalitions, being constantly in the face of those who are in charge of policy and practices, and making sure that the public is fully aware through community meetings and outreach to the entire community of what is actually taking place in the community. So it's on public display. And so that means you also have to have Black media on your side and also engage mainstream white media as well.
Yeah, I would totally agree. We got one post that says there's not a lot of stuff that I don't like, but the police is the main one I don't like to deal with. I don't like to deal with them. A few weeks ago, a car got broken into, didn't even call them, just fixed the window. Dang.
Yeah.
Like when it's a simple situation like your car, I mean, that's what the police are supposed to do, to help, track down. I mean, in a situation like that, if you're not even calling the police to deal with a simple thing like, hey, somebody busted into my car, like the trust is gone.
But when you look at us as a people, I mean, again, a generational trauma of dealing with the police. We are the only people that from generation to generation have to teach our children how to behave so that they can come home safe, so that they don't get shot by the police. They don't get abused or arrested for some nonsense. And so how many of us still freeze up, tense up when we're driving a car and you see a police car coming either right behind you or in the opposite direction? Something automatically triggers in our mind that we need to be on our P's and Q's. That's generational trauma. And we still have to teach our children how to behave when they're pulled over from the police, because we want them to get home safe.
And I mean, look, I know it. I've experienced it. You are absolutely right. And it is trauma. It's generational trauma. And that's why, and we don't have enough time to go into this part of the conversation, but I will say that's why it's important that we check, as adults, as parents, check our generational trauma, becoming, be acknowledged, aware of this trauma, so that way we don't pass it to our children. That way we don't teach them fear. That way we don't teach them to buckle under, because somebody comes with authority, that you can still stand up with your chest held high, your face looking a person eye to eye, and still be respectful of their authority. This ain't 1822. This is 2022.
It's just hard to be respectful of authority that has been abusive for so many.
That's true. But you know what the respect, and you know this because you taught me this too, brother, like that the respect comes from the fact that at the end of the day, I'm a man.
Right.
At the end of the day, I'm a man. Now, you're not going to take my manhood from me, and I ain't going to, have something to say about it. I'm still a man.
Right.
So I'm not going to be shaking in my boots, especially in the presence of my son or my daughter or my wife. Like, I'm a man. Like, no, sir. I mean, you don't have to. And I tell officers, I will follow exactly what you asked me to do, because guess what? I'm trying to go home tonight. That's all I'm trying to do.
But you're not.
I know I ain't committing no wrong.
Right. But you're not going to demean me as a man.
No, you're not going to demean and take away my humanity, or you want to make me feel like I'm a little boy or less than because you got some authority. I'll respect your authority, but you damn sure ain't taking my manhood.
Right. Right.
I just said, you're not taking my manhood, man. I got to go home and I got to look at myself in the mirror every day. You're not taking my manhood, man.
Right.
Folks, look, we got to take another pause. When we come back, we're going to have a couple of conversations. One, let's talk about the NFL. It is Super Bowl weekend that is upon us. So we're going to talk about what's going on with the NFL. And of course, I got a little surprise for you. If you did not know, on Super Bowl Sunday, a little 90s throwback is going to be happening, but with a whole new spin. And we're going to be hearing from Culture crew member Nira Muhammad in a moment. So stay with us. A lot to get to in the final 30 of the Culture here on Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Wow. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
You dig?
All right, folks, Super Bowl weekend is upon us, and many people are getting themselves ready for the big game on Sunday between the Los Angeles Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, as part of this celebration, there are a number of conversations happening around the NFL. The big conversation, of course, is still the lawsuit of former Miami Dolphins head coach Brian Flores that has just caused a major shockwave throughout the league, to the point where the league is forced to speak on the disparity of black head coaches. Now, also that is happening, we're going to talk about this sometime next week, God willing, that there is a number of former ex-employees, women employees who worked within the league, in the headquarters and in other spaces in the league, that are saying the league is toxic for women. So now the league got a problem with black people in leadership role and got a problem with women. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Now, here's something that came up over the past couple of days. Now, Roger Goodell, in a conversation about, he's in Los Angeles, he's doing all of these interviews, but in one conversation, he said, quote, "Yes, I do bear the responsibility, as well as all of our clubs, for the lack of diversity in the head coaching role." He said that the league will review its policies on diversity and inclusion and would consider a complete overhaul. But the problem is he offered no specifics and said as of now, he has no solutions. He says, quote, "You don't take anything off the table. So if it requires an overhaul, you do it. If it requires changes in other areas, you do it. Obviously, we haven't been successful to date, so we've got to look at every one of those alternatives." Now, you got to know that the league is composed of 32 teams, and they have only 5 minority head coaches. Mike Tomlin of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Lovie Smith, who was recently hired by the Houston Texans, are black, and Mike McDaniel, recently hired by the Miami Dolphins, is multiracial. The Washington Commanders, the Washington football team, Ron Rivera, is the only Latino head coach in the NFL. And the New York Jets, Robert Saleh, is Arab American. I want to go back to my crew. We got my big brother Eric Lee, Reverend Eric Lee, community organizer and pastor. And we're joined by writer and educator and host of Queen Talks with Nira, my wife, Nira Muhammad. Thank you all for being a part of the conversation. Let's talk a little bit about this NFL situation. Roger Goodell Nero, when he says he bears the responsibility for the lack of diversity and inclusion. He's been in this role for 16 years as the commissioner for the NFL. He bears the responsibility. He's had more than enough time to change the situation. I don't think that's enough to change. I just don't think that if he just got there last year, I would be like, oh, okay, he's taking on it. He's saying if he gotten there 3 years ago, I would have been like, okay, 16 years, bro, you are part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they all know what's going on. They're all buddies. I mean, we saw that with the Belichick situation, with the whole text message, with him knowing that they'd already hired someone for the position, and they were still interviewing people as if they hadn't already hired someone for the position. So again, as you just said, this is he's saving face. That's what he's doing. He's saying what needs to be said at this point in time. And I mean, what difference? Like, what do we expect him to say differently right now?
That he's going to change. I'm like, what do I expect to say differently? We're about to hire some black coaches who want a job.
Oh, so you want him to lie?
I mean, look, hey, look, brother Eric, he still sound like he just got this information yesterday or a couple of months ago. We'll review our policy. Come on, bro. Like, you review your policies, and then the crazy part is he didn't offer any specifics on what he's going to do to change the culture.
Because he had no plan to.
Exactly.
And the only reason that he's saying it now is because we're pulling him on the carpet about it. And so that's the same thing when I was talking about in terms of dealing with policing. You have to be able to challenge the status quo publicly in order to make change. And change may come incrementally, may come slow. I mean, 16 years is a long time. But until someone was going to raise the flag of discrimination and wave that flag loud enough for others to hear, which is in the court system, then, he was, how else is he going to be compelled to do anything? And so as long as he's given a free pass, he's going to keep doing what makes him comfortable and all the owners comfortable.
You mean the billionaire owners too?
Oh, billionaire owners.
The billionaire owners of those 32 teams. Here's what, now this is how I know that he's just off the mark. I mean, he's been off the mark about these issues, which I'm not really surprised, but I'm a little bit like scratching my head, because when Colin Kaepernick situation, I mean, it wasn't until a year and a half, 2 years after Kaepernick didn't play that he finally came around. I think it was last summer, if I'm not mistaken, in June of last year, where he was like, after some real thought, I think that our players, I
mean, didn't that take like the whole George Floyd situation to happen? Like, it wasn't even like Colin related when he finally came out and like made an apology. It was way, way long overdue.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
it was way past due.
Like it's past due, and then he brings one of our most revered artists of all time, Jay-Z, into the conversation. And look, people got mad at Jay-Z and all of that stuff, but at the end of the day, that's like Jay-Z only could do but so much. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, Jay can only do but so much. I'm glad that he's kind of helping to organize the Inspire Change campaign. But the big crux of this whole situation is that, Mr. Commissioner, you've been at the helm of this thing. You can't tell me that you just noticed that there aren't any black faces, there's no black head coaches. You can't tell me that you didn't notice that women aren't really appreciated and welcome in your league. You can't tell me that. You knew that.
Yeah, I mean, look at the way the cheerleaders are paid. I mean, these are athletes. Being a cheerleader is a serious athlete, and they are paid crumbs. I mean, absolute crumbs. At this point, the league, these teams make so much money. Women should be treated so much better than what they're being treated. And again, these are jokes. These are things that, I mean, these men are laughing, and it's like locker room banter, but it's like an organization. So, I mean, there's so many different angles that the NFL needs to be examined at, and we have to really look at our dollars. Where do we want to spend our dollars in terms of the NFL? But I have to say, Farajii, because I know you're going to get to that, 70% of the NFL is black. Our players are black. So when we stop supporting the NFL, we're not supporting those black players. So we have to take that into consideration before we say, oh, I'm going to just 100% boycott the NFL. Then we're boycotting our sons, our nephews.
Here's what I say to that, dear, that I don't want to take money out of the pockets of players, Brother Eric, but they got a lot of money to spare. You know, they're getting paid very, very well. Right. And it'd be one thing if they were getting paid just a couple of $1 million to run up and down the field. They're getting paid contracts that most people will never see that type of money. And more importantly, their prominence is so high on the list that you've seen it, Nira, you, Brother Eric, you know it, that little black boys aspire to being a football player, not just because they love football. They want that money. They want that money. They want to get $100 million contract to run that ball. And that's the part about it. Like, the implication of that situation is so big that it's not just about playing the game. It's about the fact of being a commodity. And dear, we talked about this the other day, that if these owners are at a point that if you getting broken up on the field, they'll send out the stretcher. But guess what? Trust and believe there's another one that's going to fill your position in the same game.
Yeah, so there's no longevity. They may be getting paid a lot of money, but I think the average professional lifespan of a football player is around 5 years.
Right.
And so, you know, after they've made that money over that 5-year period, then what else after that? And so then the other issue is it's all relative, because they might be making millions of dollars for that brief period of time, that 5-year period of time, but they're making so much more money for the owners that goes into a career and a profession that is generational for them.
Yeah.
See, football playing is not generational per se. It's a very short period of time. And that the money that they're being paid to risk their lives on that football field, because it is controlled violence. And the size of them brothers out there and the speed that they're running at, you will lose your life if you get hit the wrong way.
Right.
You can be paralyzed.
Yep.
Well, relatively speaking, the money that they're making, the owners, is an extreme inequity when it comes to in terms of the value that these football players are providing to the owners and the benefit that the owners are getting. And so, you know, I can't say that, to Nira's point, we have to continue supporting our brothers, our sons, our nephews, our uncles, our cousins, whoever it is that's out on the football field. And though they're making some money, comparably speaking, it's nowhere close to what they're making for those owners.
No, they're not.
Brother Eric just took us to church with that, Farajii.
He did.
I was like, I felt that.
Amen. But no, speaking of owners, Brother Eric and Nira, the other big story around this is that Byron Allen is looking to become the NFL's first black owner, because he's looking to put together a bid for the Denver Broncos. Now, Byron Allen, if folks remember, I remember back in the day, I don't know if y'all remember, Byron Allen used to have this late night show, and that's how late it was. It came on like 1 or 2 in the morning or something, just one of them shows that just be on. And he would talk, and and then to see him grow is crazy, but he's looking to buy an NFL team.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, quote, that he was approached by both, which is odd. He was approached by NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell and New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft. He said, it came to me in November of 2019 and asked me to take a good look at buying an NFL team. And he said, after serious consideration, I strongly believe I can help effectuate positive changes throughout the league. And for that reason, I will be making a bid for the Denver Broncos. Now, he is leading a group of investors who are expected to submit a bid in the amount of, y'all ready for this one? Hold on to your socks. $3 billion to $4 billion. And this is according to Bloomberg, to buy the Denver Broncos. $3 to $4 billion. Oh, real quick, what's your take on this?
Is Byron going to be the majority shareholder?
Owner?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
That's an excellent question.
That's a great question. I hope, and look.
And then who's he investing with?
Or because of the environment that we're in, where they have the lawsuit, is it, you know, I know he said it came in 2019, but you know, they could have seen this coming. They could, because we've been talking about the inequity in terms of head coaching positions for years. And so could they have seen this coming and planned out to have, you know, a black person, could be man or woman, that would be an owner of an NFL team, but would they be the front person as opposed to really the majority owner?
Right.
That's my question.
So check this out. This bid that he's putting in for the Denver Broncos surpasses other bids. The last time somebody had bought an NFL team was Mr. David Tepper back in 2018, where he bought the Carolina Panthers at the price of $2.2 billion. Prior to that, the national record for most ever paid by a businessman to own a professional sports franchise was by the name of Joseph Tsai, who purchased the Brooklyn Nets in 2017 for $2.3 billion. Byron, they already given Byron Allen the black man price. You got to come in that joint higher.
That is so messed up, Farajii. That's like $1 billion more. Like, that's so unfair.
They gave him the but to the defense, they're probably looking at, like I said, this is 2017, 2018.
Oh, and inflation.
We're in 2022. Everything, bread is higher, so NFL teams are going to be higher at this point.
No, right? You're right. Everything costs more.
Everything costs more, but for $3 to $4 billion, he's buying a team. My big question is that going to, as he thinks, is going to effectuate positive change? Do you believe that to be the case? Nero, what's your thought?
To be honest, I'm hoping that it'll impact positive change, because we've always been looked at, as Eric just mentioned, we're the players. We've never been an owner before. So that gives our children a new dream, something new to look up to. I don't want to just be a player on an NFL team. Now I can see myself as owning a football team. So yeah, this does so much just for our representation for our boys and our girls. So yeah, I'm all for it. I would love to see it. As Eric mentioned as well, I'm hoping that Byron will have some real stake in the company and, you know, really have a not just be the front man, but actually really own it. Right.
Eric, what's your take, sir?
Well, I don't know. We have some examples in terms of Magic. Doesn't Magic own part of the Dodgers, Los Angeles?
Right.
And so have we seen any noticeable change in terms of how they operate their organization? I think time will tell. But I also think that the league is much bigger than any one team and any one owner. So, you know, the change that we hope would come from a black owner, you know, again, may be incremental at best. We just have to wait and see.
We do have to wait and see. I can't wait to see how this whole deal plays out, because if it does, of course, we're going to talk about it here on the Culture and Black Star Network. But, you know, just to see that type of money is being put up on the table. There was some conversation that Diddy said, it's Diddy. So, you know, he at one point he's talking about buying a team. But when you're talking about that type of money, you realize that these owners are not for play. They are serious. And whether they are winning or they are losing, guess what? Money is always a big factor when it comes to the NFL. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, trends, posts, and doing the most. And we got something to share with you, as even though we're talking Super Bowl weekend, I'm going to bring an old 90s favorite to you in a way that you probably never thought would happen. We're going to have that. So stay with us. It's The Culture on Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
All right, folks, it's time for us to tell you what the trends post and who's doing the most. All right, let me just preference this first story about trends post and who's doing the most. This person I have a great respect for. I mean, he's been a part of the hip hop community for at least 20 years. But he is definitely doing the most in a good way. Snoop Dogg, your old Eric, your former LA resident. I know you were living up in the same neighborhood with Snoop back in the day. Snoop Dogg has decided to go back home, and what do I mean? He has went and bought Death Row Records, the label that has taken him and put him on the map. So he has decided to buy the brand of Death Row Records. And of course, Death Row, founded in 1992 by Suge Knight, and Dr. Dre and DOC and another gentleman by the name of Dick Griffey. So Death Row, back in the day, you remember in the 90s and probably early 2000s, like Death Row was a force to be reckoned with when it comes to West Coast hip hop. And under Suge Knight, infamous. They became infamous. But Snoop Dogg has decided that he wanted to buy the record company. He wanted to buy this brand. And as a result, along with him buying the brand, he's putting out a new album called BODR, Back on Death Row. And he's also looking to offer NFTs, which is something that's like a new style of art currency right now. So I want to bring in my culture crew, Nira Muhammad, and of course, big brother Eric Lee. Nira, when you heard about Snoop Dogg doing his buyback of Death Row, and he's offering like NFTs, for $5,000.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really dope. I think it's very inspirational to see him go back to his roots, and obviously just to see Snoop get any type of satisfaction. He's like an uncle to all of us. Like, we all have grown up with Snoop. We love him, whether he's acting or making music. You love to see him doing good. So I'm just really excited for him, and I'm really excited to check out his new album. I just think it's super, super inspirational. So big ups to Snoop.
Absolutely. He bought it. He bought Death Row, brother Eric, and now he's looking to make some changes. He says he's excited about it. He's happy to be in a position to really, take Death Row to a different level. Is it good for the culture?
Absolutely. I mean, you've seen Snoop mature over the years, and the beginnings in hip hop at Death Row to where he is now, where he's inviting people to watch the Super Bowl. I mean, he is welcoming the host for welcoming people to the Super Bowl. So his evolution to the point that he is now, I think, is going to be wonderful for Death Row Records. And
absolutely,
I just want to know, is he still coaching football?
He's always coaching football.
He's
still coaching football. And matter of fact, it's so cool because I mean, on Super Bowl on Sunday, he's performing along with Dr. Dre, Mary J. Blige, Eminem, and Kendrick Lamar. They all going to rock SoFi Stadium. I'm gonna watch that.
I'm so excited. I'm
gonna watch the joint. I'm gonna watch it. I'm going to definitely watch it.
And are you rooting for anybody? Who are you rooting for?
I guess I gotta go with the Rams.
I'm going with the LA Rams on this one. I ain't like the Bengals. I don't like the Bengals. They've always been showstoppers for the Ravens.
Listen, not only that, they took Brady out, so I mean they gotta win at this point.
We're going for the Rams.
Brady out, you gotta win it.
You gotta go for the Rams. All right. All right. So, folks, speaking of Super Bowl Sunday, you can watch the big game, but then there's the 90s throwback that is taking a new twist and turn. Did you know that the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air will be back on the air, but in a very different way? Check this out.
This time we're trying to make you forget who you are and where you came from. Don't let it do that.
Damn! Jeffrey Thompson, house manager. 10 years is a long time.
Let me show you around.
Where them dimes at?
Hillary. Let's go find you something fit for a prince.
What do you think?
I made you look.
Yo, Uncle Phil. I'm glad you're safe. We'll talk later.
Cousin Will! Yo! Is this really baby Ashley?
You're a long way from home, Mom.
Oh, Tim. How you been?
You know, thriving. I hope one day we can talk about why you're really here.
Do you know why I'm here from Philly?
Scrapping the bull court. Got nasty.
Oh, food ice! Was it you?
Now some bad man from Philly, he want to deal with you.
Boy, I moved mountains to get you here. So here's the story. Came to Bel Air for a better education. Simple. Be patient. Give this a real chance.
We have a different set of rules here, okay? If you want to do well, just keep your head down and follow my lead.
Whoa, whoa. Man, you know I'm a rep West Philly wherever I go. Yo, King, what's up, man? No love.
Look around. These are my people.
What? From now on, steer clear.
Welcome to Bel Air.
What the hell is my life?
Yo, chill out, bro.
Maybe Will just isn't cut out for this. Why are we working so hard to save a boy who doesn't want to be saved?
Because we owe it to him.
A real man takes responsibility for his actions. A real man knows when to let go of his pride and make the most out of a second chance.
Be the Will who charmed West Philly with his talent and swag.
Let the music diffuse all attention. Get out my face, you people so phony.
There's no going back.
I made you look. I'm king of the town.
Wow.
I'm beyond excited for Farajii. That's one of my favorite shows of all time. It's gonna be different because Uncle Phil looks a lot different, but I'm so excited. I love this new spin on it. This is like, it's so perfect. It like matches the times. I think the original was perfect for the 90s, but I'm really excited about seeing this updated new version. The cast looks amazing. I'm loving the accents. I'm just loving everything. I can't wait. I'm ready. I'm so ready.
Eric, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is now just Bel-Air.
Hey,
what's your take, sir?
The other side of the coin. It's the other side of the coin. We're gonna see the real story.
I love it. I'm all here for it. We're gonna do our best to try to get some of the folks behind this rendition, this remix of our beloved sitcom. But to see Will Smith's name on this, to see so many dynamic young actors, new faces, I love it. I cannot wait, folks. It's dropping on Super Bowl Sunday on Peacock. I'm telling you, I'm
amazing.
excited. I am
so glad I renewed my Peacock subscription. Right. Yes.
I'm just gonna say, hey, this is a show that I think we definitely need. It's going to be so good for the culture in so many ways. And I love the representation of Black excellence and Black power and Black wealth in this show. It's going to be phenomenal. All right, Brother Eric Lee, Nira Muhammad, thank you so much for joining us. We truly appreciate y'all.
Thank you, brother.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. I thank all of you for tuning in, for your comments, for the love, and let's continue to push the conversation for the culture. Make sure that you show your support for Black Star Network. You know how. Just take a look at the bottom of the screen. And of course, we need your support to download the app. If you like all of these other apps, download Black Star Network, and you will be able to do so right at blackstarnetwork.com. Support us because we need your support. We are expanding. Our programming is expanding, and we want you to be there for the growth and for the rise of this Black media empire. All right, stay tuned. In a little bit, we're going to be checking in with my big brother, Roland Martin, for Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk again for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.